Hey, this is Eric McBride at MTAC in Muncie, Indiana. Today we're going to be talking to Mr. Brett Dix. We've hired recently Brett to come on board as one of our lead instructors. And for a lot of you that know that our American Patriot series has been missing a key component, and that is our force on force, our home defense and our personal protection type classes. And we brought Brett on to start revamping those, creating some new curriculum. And like we talked before with Jim Anthony from USCCA, we're going to try to mesh that together so that there's a transition, a seamless transition from all the way from the basic pistol class through their concealed carry, all those tactics and skills they have to do in the home defense, and then right into, you know, actually going up against human role players. So I'm going to introduce him. This is Brett Dix. Brett, tell us a little bit about your background, where you started and how you became an instructor, and we'll go from there.
All right, great. Yeah, so my background really is heavily into the private sector. So obviously, I mean, even back as a kid in high school, working unarmed security, right? And then I got more and heavily involved in that and became a security contractor as well. It kind of just developed over the years. During my term, one of the things I really focused on a lot and enjoyed was close protection detail. So I spent a lot of my time in protective operations, working various positions, and kind of finalized that end of that career as a director, running a 5-man detail for a corporation that protected the director of the corporation and his family. Kind of got a little tired of that, wanted to try something new, so I got into facility, you know, like tier 1 high-risk facility protection operations. And so whole level of certifications on there as well. And that's where I kind of retired after about 23 years in the industry. I kind of retired from that. But while I was doing it, one of the things I really wanted to do was learn deeper. That was really what drove me to want to become an instructor. I really didn't want to teach when I first started. You know, and the first thing I thought was I really wanted to get into as a defensive tactics instructor. So that was the first thing I did. So so I targeted a law enforcement training curriculum and got certified as a DT instructor, which encompassed a lot more than I thought it was going to when you get into like handcuffing and baton. But you know, a lot of what we did was hands-on, you know, controlling subjects close to our principals. So that's what I kind of saw that I wanted to understand more. I mean, while we did have a DT training program that we were involved in, I wanted to kind of know the back end of it. That's kind of what started the whole career, and then from there it went to handgun instructor, and then it went to spontaneous knife defense instructor, to carbine instructor, and then I obviously, like back in the day, right? I got a hold of the book on combat by Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman, which literally that just opened up my mind even bigger as to what's going on out there and the physiological and psychological effects. So I really got deep into that from an intellectual standpoint, wanting to understand what's going on physiologically with the body during violence, and which drove a deeper understanding of training and why we need training, and especially like what you guys are do, which is the force on force type and force on role player, which really induces that level of stress. It creates, you know, Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman calls it Medal of Honor training, right? I mean, where you're literally inoculating stress into people, reducing the effects of that sympathetic nervous system. So, and then of course I went further on, you know, and now I'm just private sector teaching. So now I teach across the country, mostly with a focus on instructor development. So teaching concealed carry firearms instructors, getting them initial certification, and then running advanced level certification with them. And then I recently got certified as a CQB shoot house law enforcement firearms instructor. And today, so I do still travel teaching across the country. with that emphasis on instructor development. But I'm also a law enforcement officer in the state of Indiana, working on the streets of America.
Yeah.
So, which I think that to me, as being the type of instructor that I want to be, I think, as we all envision what we want, what type of instructor we want to be as we grow. For me, physical capabilities, being able to do the techniques fast, effectively, dynamically, and then of course knowing the material inside and out, broader and deeper than the slide, as I always say. That's also a critical component, as to what I consider. Bruce Siddle says the exceptional instructor, right? And as I envision that, but one of the things that I think for me as an instructor personally is really important is to be out there engaged in violence on a regular basis.
Right.
And as a law enforcement officer, I not only get to serve the community, serve people, be there in someone's need, but also, I get that exposure, I think, that makes me a better instructor.
Right. Well, and it also helps you in your personal endeavors. There's the continuation to be like you said, and to be a better instructor, not only to yourself but to your students. But then on a personal level, as an officer of the law, constantly being in that situation and constantly improving yourself with others, and being able to utilize that on the streets, which is really important. So I'm going to take you even further back. So even before you did all of that, were you a shooter, a gun collector? What was your first, like for me at 18, first thing I did was go buy a handgun off of a guy. And I was so enamored by it and was really into the shooting portion of it. And even before then it was BB guns and et cetera. And coming from a family that didn't have any guns, and that was something for me. So, take me back that far.
Okay.
What got you there? And then obviously we understand the transition once you get into it, but everybody always has that aha moment of, I need training.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Well, I remember it really far back. So, I was born in 1969. So in the early 70s, at 5 years old, I always knew I wanted to run and gun. Right, 5 years old, I was playing with soldiers out in the front lawn, and that was just something I knew at 5 years old in kindergarten. I just knew that I wanted to do something like that. And while growing up, I had ideas of what I wanted that to be, I gravitated right to that private sector. It just seems like the opportunities opened early for me, and that's what I ended up doing. But my dad was a deputy sheriff for Washtenaw County up in Michigan at the time. And so that was when I really started learning. And as I grew up, I went and I did, the hunter safety course and stuff like that. But I've never been, my dad bought me some rifles when I was growing up and things, like a little .22 Marlin was the first one I had, and took me out and taught me how to shoot, him being an ex-Marine as well. And, but that's kind of, I think, what really developed it. And my dad really didn't, how do we say, nurture that desire.
Yeah.
He kind of wanted me to go in a different direction and not really, following that pathway. But I think he didn't discourage it either. He just kind of knew that was what was going to happen.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of the direction that I ended up going.
That's great. It's always interesting because, there's a lot, obviously we know there's a lot more people that own guns or shoot guns and don't train. And so I think for the folks that are watching our vlogs, eventually we're going to start running into some of those folks who may be thinking, what about training? Well, I'm going to watch some of it and see what that's about. It's always good to talk to them about how even we got into training. So for some people it was law enforcement. That was the first place they got to start training. Other people, they got to do some civilian classes up front. And I think you actually made me think about that hunter's ed course. I took it in 7th grade in school, which is phenomenal. Yeah. So that would probably be my first taste of that. And obviously wasn't a whole lot of shooting going on that, but it was a class. And I'd forgotten about that, so that's really cool. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about our relationship and the synergy that we have. Once we met, I'll never forget your first words to me were, I felt like a neophyte. And, you know, that really was pretty cool to hear and humbling. But then to see your background and your resume, I'm like, wow, geez, this guy's like really good looking on paper, right?
Yeah.
You got a great amount of experience, and you're a train-the-trainer. And so for MTAC, what you mean to us is bringing in this multi-level, multi-layer experience in helping us write new curriculum. And then eventually, we're going to continue to bring on more and more instructors. So there's an instructor development role there. And then ultimately you come at me with this CFO thing at a very large engine company in Indiana. And I'm like, well, shoot, that just fits right into where we're moving. And so we're real excited to have you. And I know our students are going to benefit greatly from it. Not going to go into what curriculum we're writing right now. We'll save that for another vlog.
Yeah.
However, it's exciting. You know, I think our alumni know where our holes are right now because we've been so consistent in our class offerings, and now we've missed out on these particular courses. But we're real excited to have you do that. Tell us a little bit about, you know, this transition. What drew you towards what we do here at MTAC?
Yeah. So, you know, when I met you, you were doing that presentation and talking about MTAC and what you guys do. And I, you know, what kind of drew me was, you know, as an instructor, as me, as an individual, I wouldn't say as an instructor because not every instructor feels this way.
Sure.
But as the type of instructor that I am, and then I've cultivated myself to be, development is critical, and that open-mindedness, that understanding that you don't know it all. No matter how many certifications you have, no matter whether, you know, you've taught SEAL Team 6 everything or whatever it is your background is, you never will know it all. I think when I met you and I saw what you guys are doing here, I thought to myself, not only can I be a contributor to this, not only can I bring in great value and all the teaching experience that I've done, but I can learn a lot, right? What you guys are doing here, the facilities you have, not everyone has. Right. You know, and so for me, I thought, wow, this is the next level of involvement for me in my own personal instructor development as well. Mm-hmm. So, I got real excited about that. Yeah. And I think that, you know, what we're getting ready to bring in, not just with me, but in the next coming handful of years, as you and I have discussed, all the multifacets and capabilities that MTAC is going to is involved in, is going to be involved in, and can develop. I mean, the opportunities are literally endless. I mean, you're really going to be able to help a lot of people because you know and I know. I mean, while backgrounds are really, you know, they're nice to have, and I think they bring credibility, but you know, we're past the days now. If a lot of the listeners here and you think back in the day, before training was really popular, before training, I mean, you talk about in the 60s, before the federal government dumped money into law enforcement and created degrees, even a college degree availability. I mean, the federal government had to fund that. Experience was the key, right? So they always put a rookie, think about it back in like law enforcement, they put a rookie with the cop, with an experienced cop, and that's how the training was done. But nowadays, through what we've learned about human science, what drives how people react, and how we can drive training for that. Training is really what it's all about now. In order to gain that experience, you can gain all that experience through training, almost all of it. So, you know, while you can have a great background, you know, your students and your alumni and the future students that are even looking at coming, you know, by latching on to MTAC and going through from, you know, some of the Patriot series all the way up through Tier 1 type stuff, are really going to be exposed to that far left to the right end spectrum, the whole gamut all the way across. And, you know, they're going to be able to transcend what they see now, what they look at someone, they say, oh, this guy's, you know, former this, or this guy's got a resume like that. You know, you can work towards becoming similar skill sets and capabilities of those individuals through training. And that's how I always view training. Training is is so critical nowadays, and what we can do in training and how we can create those stimulus responses, right? Automated responses and reactions to external stimulus. It's extremely profound.
It is, and that's basically describes the force on force side of the house, or force on role player, is you don't have time to think about how to release your slide, drop a magazine.
Right.
You're
And all
beyond
those,
that. You're processing
Yep.
what's occurring in front of you and trying to control your emotions.
And it's those earlier classes, those skill development courses, you know, when you're talking all the way going back to learning in the classroom to now, you know, using a UTM pistol, to then stepping to a line drills on a live fire, then learning the physical skills, like, you know, all the different skills, weapon system manipulation skills that are done, and then getting those down into the neural pathways, and now stepping in to a force on paper, increasing that stress sum, to then force on role player, to then force on force. It's just a progression that takes someone from basically zero skill sets. You can create warriors today.
Yeah.
All the way through. And that's what the science, knowledge of science and human performance in a violent environment can drive training to create warriors, winners on the back end. I mean, it's
right.
just amazing.
Yeah, it is. And so many people do themselves a disservice by jumping ahead.
Oh, absolutely.
And we see that here all the time. Yeah. And I'm not, you know, here to judge that. I mean, it's their money. They spend it how they want. But just like you said, take your time, get through the progression, and you're going to be a whole different person by the time you're faced with somebody shooting back at you.
Yeah, I know so many times through my career I met guys that were just, you know, we were in specialized training, and the first thing you always hear is somebody just opens up their mouth and said, "Man, I can't wait till we're done." And it's like, why would you want to rush this? This is a once in a lifetime opportunity, you know. Savor every moment of every type of training. You know, yes, on the back end, having that reward, having that ribbon, having that designation is always a joy. But enjoy the process of earning it along the way, and don't cheat yourself out. You know, go. You know, if you don't know those physical skills, you know, if you can't reload that gun in less than 1.5 seconds, if you can't come out of the holster and put a shot on target in 1.2 seconds from concealment, you know, work on those skills, get those skills, develop those neural pathways. Once those bands are developed and you can do that without thinking, then push yourself into that next level.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's also, with that, the opportunity, you know, for your own personal development, not just you, but our students. You don't have to continue to have us do those skills. Take that out on the range. Come in here, test it. Okay, here's where my deficiencies were, and get back out on that range and hit those skills. Like you said, start hitting some of those, you know, bill drills and the, you know, different ones that are timed.
Yep.
And have these par times and start beating those par times. Come back in here and see how that translates against a human being.
Yeah, that's one thing I always try to teach to my students, is to get them to understand that when you take a skills class, I mean, I'm not talking about force on force, because that's a lot, you know, a lot of equipment, a very controlled environment, takes a very specific instructor to run. But those skills that you're learning in those classes, that's where you're learning it. You're just doing enough repetitions to correctly that you're going to be able to go out and do this on your own, whether you're doing it dry or you're doing it live.
Right.
But this is your initial training. Your training continues to go on your own, you know, just like you would, you know, you go to the driving range and you get a golf pro to teach you how to drive a little bit better, right? And then you go out and you practice that on your own. It's the same thing. So you've got to, you know, as a student of warfare, right? I mean, that's really what it is. You're preparing for that one moment and potential in your life. You have to, how much time am I going to spend on this? What kind of resources am I going to dedicate towards this over the next year? You know, this coming year. How much money? Right? And that's what I do. You know, what am I lacking in? Where are my weaknesses? What do I want to strengthen up? What do I want to reinforce?
Right.
And that's a good assessment to go through each and every year as you plan out your pathway to where you want to go.
Yeah. And so there's, and I feel like the people that come and just let us do all the work for them, think they're TFR trained, and we all know that it's an ongoing thing. And then you have those that are really into a development phase and reading books and trying to learn as much as they can and challenging themselves. And where's the next challenge for me? They look a lot different in here than the others, and you can just really see that. And we always like that. So what's important for me as we bring on instructors, our student first mentality, right? Because we're always developing professionally, that we can continue to assist our students in their development. And that's so important. And I don't think, I know our students may not overtly appreciate it, but they do by the amount of material that they're getting through that. So, so yeah, we're excited to have you. We're about ready to do a lot of good things, and we're really glad to have you on board.
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So for everybody listening, the next time you'll see Brett, we'll be with Luke, and then we're going to be announcing the classes that Brett's about to really go work very hard on, and we're excited to get that out to you guys. So keep watching. In the meantime, if you got any questions for Brett, shoot them over to admin@mtactraining.com. We appreciate you being here. Now it's time to get to work. So that's it from here.